There's media talk about the former KGB, Putin, Russia, trying to develop a nuclear weapon for outer space, which would obviously be devastating because there are agreements in place and understandings that we're not going to do that. And I fear the Biden administration is slow-walking this as much as they're slow-walking Iran building nukes. And the next day we'll wake up and things are going to happen. So nobody better to talk to than Representative Michael Waltz of Florida. Michael Waltz, how are you, my friend?
Well, Mark, it's another day, another day in the swamp. But in all serious note, it's always an honor to walk up those Capitol steps and fight for this great nation. And I just got to say, on the point you just made, Russia, Iran, I will continue to remind everyone I can, this administration tried to get us into another Iran deal, except this time they were negotiating through the Russians and doing it with an Iran apologist, a traitor, Rob Malley, that, oh, by the way, amongst the many things we can't get answers for, we can't get answers on what damage this Iran apologist did to national security, much less his little ecosystem, some of whom are still sitting on classified systems. But I know you have other things you want to talk about.
No. They had a whole spy ring, and it's like it never happened. I mean, it's a whole group of Alger Hiss types, and everybody blows it off. You don't, I don't, a handful of us don't, but it's like it never happened. Yeah,
right. Well, and one of them, Tabatabai, is still sitting in the Pentagon, the chief of, not just, in some basement office somewhere. She's the chief of staff to the assistant secretary for all special operations, all our compartmented special access programs that our most sensitive special operators all over the world have to flow through there for permission, resources, and budget. And she's still there. And we get a notice back from the Pentagon. We've looked into it. Nothing to see here. So we're going to have Secretary Austin before the committee to talk about his AWOL episode before the Armed Services Committee. And that's going to be at the top of my list.
So tell us about this to the extent you can. You're on the Intel Committee, what Russia's up to and why this is important to know.
Well, obviously would not get into classified information. However, Kirby today did say, look, this has to do with an anti-satellite weapon. It has to do with the Russians, and got into some details. So speaking off of that, like Mark, I'm sure your very tuned in listeners and viewers know, but it is worth repeating. Our entire economic system is dependent now, thrives on our assets in space, agriculture, GPS, telecommunications, banking. And, we have thrived economically. Russia has not. They know we are far more dependent. So if you have a weapon that takes it all out up there, it would hurt us far more than them, but it would also send our economy back into the dark ages. So it is very serious. It's very grave. The part the media is not covering is that the reason Chairman Turner, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, took this drastic step was that he had sent multiple classified letters to the Biden administration. What are we doing? What's our strategy? How are we going to counter? How are we going to deter? And it won't surprise you to hear it was nothing but radio silence. So with an administration that has the world on fire, that takes an appeasement-first approach, an America-last approach, with a president that loses his defense secretary for a week, apparently he doesn't talk to very much in the middle of multiple hot wars, Chairman Turner said, number one, this is so serious, we need to have every member of Congress be aware of it, not just the few that are on the Intelligence Committee. So that's I think a big step towards transparency. And number two, the whole world needs to know about it because it would have global implications. And lo and behold, Jake Sullivan is over on the Hill today, finally Biden's national security advisor, talking to us. So that's kind of the backstory. And then finally, because the Democrats are now wringing their hands about it. It was a unanimous vote in the committee to do this, and the administration was informed that we were going to do it. But I just wanted to kind of help set the record straight there.
So it was bipartisan in the Intelligence Committee that this request will be made to the White House and that this information needs to get the American people and all members of Congress. I'm very troubled here. They blow this off. They blow off Iran with their nukes. And one day we're going to wake up. Iran's going to have
Houthis.
They declare and Hamas originally. And so what's going to happen is we're going to wake up one day. Iran's going to have nukes. Putin's going to have nukes in the sky. And we're going to say, oh, we have to play catch up. In the meantime, we are not providing enough resources to the United States military. He's now slashing about 20% of our S-35 stealth fighter jets. We are behind on numbers in every area of our military force structure. Every one, 40-year lows.
Yep.
In the case of ships, we have fewer ships than we had before World War II. I mean, we have a huge problem here, and I don't think the American people know about it because nobody's talking about it.
And we have the small, we'll just keep going, Mark. I'm going to go get a bourbon after this. But, we have the smallest army since World War II, and it's declining. Our last major advantage with China is our submarine force. Well, guess what? 40% of them are too broken to leave the yards. And I am very hesitant to obviously talk about, that's an unclassified figure, but to talk about this in a very public way. But to your point, the American people need to wake up. I think we have an assumption, we're the United States of America, we're going to kick ass in any war that we ever get into. We have adversaries right now that are on the march in very, very dangerous ways, and they're all working together. You have Iran flush with cash, sending drones to Russia, sending missiles to the Houthis, closing down global shipping. They're all providing getting technology from China. China, by the way, in 2018 launched more into space than the rest of the world combined, including us. They're on the march to put a manned station on the moon. Everything they do in space, they have something called NASA, but it's kind of a joke. Everything they do is backed by their military. And meanwhile, we have this Pentagon running around the country more worried about renaming bases and installing solar panels on them for climate and resiliency, oh, by the way, made in China, than they are any of these issues. And it's just maddening. And just one more thing, Mark, because I got to put it out there. One more thing that Trump was right about. Everybody made their jokes and made fun about the Space Force. You remember that? Well, thank God. One more thing that he knew, because he may not have every single technical detail or every weapon system, but his instincts are you got to control the ultimate high ground. And when faced with briefings that show us falling further and further behind, he kicks the Pentagon in the rear end and said, we need these guys to have their own branch, their own focus, their own budget, their own generals. And he's absolutely right, because every war game now, the first shots are in cyberspace and in outer space. That's the next frontier of conflict. President Trump instinctively knew that and forced the bureaucracy to do it.
Yeah, it is amazing how many things he did that were so prescient. And he doesn't do it from an ideological perspective. He does it from a common sense perspective. And it's amazing how much he got done despite the fact they were always trying to destroy him. And in terms of foreign policy, he was no isolationist. We have our isolationists, Mike, who tried to project their own ideology on Trump. But he wasn't an isolationist. He built up the military. He took out Soleimani. He took out ISIS. He actively supported Israel against the Palestinian terrorists. And we can go on and on and on. He wasn't an interventionist. He wasn't any of that. He actually strengthened NATO. We don't have a lot of time, but, they take his words out of context, as you've pointed out, he's going to cut off NATO and he wants Russia to. No, he wants them to pay their damn fair share so they're stronger than ever before. Right. Your final comments.
That's right. I have an op-ed coming out tomorrow. Trump was right on NATO. He's right on burden sharing. And as of last year, only 7 out of 31 were paying the minimum that they committed to over a decade ago. Only 7 out of 31 have 2% of their GDP. Enough is enough. It's a good deal for European, German, and French politicians. They could pour their federal budget into their social programs. And meanwhile, Uncle Sugar, Uncle Sam is covering their defense bill. Enough. And if they're not going to do it with a war on their doorstep, then when are they ever? And we're going to find ourselves 5 years, 7 years, 8 years from now having these same conversations in the same subsidy program that we have for European defense. Final thought, Mark. Mm-hmm. This year will be a milestone year in that the interest on our federal debt will eclipse our entire defense budget. So even if we wanted to, we can't afford it anymore, and we have got to focus on the true threat of China.
All right, brother. We're with you 100%. God bless you, and keep up the good work. Sir. All right. Michael Waltz, this guy's very, very good. He's a combat veteran, too. He's a ranger. To be a ranger, you got to be a tough ass, let me tell you.